listening to the 184th ever episode of the Missouri Sports Podcast, brought to you by 106 Apparel and recording from the Revel Advertising Studio in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. I'm one of your hosts, Cameron Albert, alongside my good friend and fellow Mizzou fan, Kyle DeVries. How are you doing today, Kyle?
I'm great, Cameron. Man, you're just a machine with that intro, man.
You think?
I'm really proud of you.
Oh, thanks. I wrote it myself.
True.
184 episodes ago.
I was gonna say you just wrote it the first ever episode, and it's just never changed.
Yeah. If it is not broken, something.
Were you waiting for me to like fill in the answer?
No. I was just thinking like everybody knows they know it.
Okay.
The audience and I, we finish each other's sentences.
That's probably true.
So how you been?
I'm good. How about you?
Pretty good. We just watched the Missouri Tigers win a basketball game.
Yeah.
Literally moments ago, we watched them beat Ole Miss in the SEC tournament.
Are you happy or sad?
I'm happy.
I
root for my team to win games.
We root for the team. Come on.
I know.
No,
I don't know.
I'm kind
confused.
I'm kind of.
I hope that wasn't devastating.
I was reacting more aggressively to kind of hide my true thoughts, maybe.
Hide the pain.
Just barely.
Yeah, I mean they kind of destroyed Ole Miss.
Yeah.
For a third time this season.
Right. It's hard to beat a team 3 times.
Yeah.
People say.
Apparently, not Ole Miss.
No. Also, Missouri beat Baylor 3 times in 2012.
Can make me cry.
Including the Big 12 championship.
Yeah.
Now, how cool. I mean, obviously, that was really fun to beat Baylor again. But if Missouri and Kansas had matched up in that Big 12 championship game, first of all, if Missouri wins, then they're a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, without a doubt.
I was going to say, if you were going to go back and change the outcome where Kansas beats Baylor and Missouri and Kansas play in the championship game, you would take that, I think, because no matter the outcome, Missouri is not matched up against Norfolk State.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if they play Kansas in that championship game and lose, how that changes things.
They're probably still a 2 seed, but maybe they just have a different matchup. I don't know.
It's possible they could be in the same spot.
Yeah.
But obviously a win there, and they are unquestionably a 1 seed.
Is that one of the saddest moments of your life?
The loss to Norfolk?
No, yes.
Norfolk. I'll be honest, I didn't actually watch it live. I had to listen to it on the radio because I was on a car trip and I was not in control of the situation.
You were on a car trip?
Yes, with my current wife, then girlfriend's family. And like I said, I had no control over the situation. I was along for the ride. We were in the Smoky Mountains outside of Gatlinburg, Tennessee. However, I did assert a little bit of control, and the channel was like starting to go in and out. We're having
listening on the radio?
Yeah, we're listening on the radio. We're having switch radio stations as we're traveling to like keep the game signal. And we started to lose it towards the end, and I was like, you got to pull over.
Can you please stop?
You got to pull over before we lose signal.
Yeah.
And I wish we hadn't. But we're going to Gatlinburg for vacation. And
ruined the vacation, didn't it?
No. It was actually a perfect situation where I was able to just pretend like basketball didn't exist for like 4 or 5 days.
Nothing like seeing a big mountain.
Exactly. And I just completely forgot about the NCAA tournament and went on with my life. And
Duke lost that night too.
Right. That helped overshadow the Mizzou situation on a national level.
Sure.
But
2 different 2 seeds going down in the same day.
Yeah.
That's wild.
To this day I've never watched. I mean,
Why would you?
I don't think that game is available in its entirety anywhere.
No, I think they banned it maybe from existence.
I've watched like the last 2 minutes on YouTube, and obviously,
It's really sad.
Yeah, Phil Pressey with the jersey up over his eyes, sitting on the floor. Ugh.
And there's like a very famous shot of what's his
Kylo
face?
Quinn.
Kylo Quinn, like celebrating in the camera.
Jumping and
they
dancing.
still play that. Like if you watch any March Madness games this year, you'll probably see that shot of Kylo Quinn like celebrating in the camera, holding his jersey or whatever it is. I don't know.
Yeah.
Doing a little rah-rah.
So on that pleasant note,
That was so fun.
Why
guys.
did we go
Thank
into
you.
that?
Jesus, just start the whole episode
All right.
over.
don't forget, subscribe to us on YouTube. Leave us a review on podcast service if you feel so inclined, and you can support the podcast directly at patreon.com/Missouri Sports Pod. Missouri ever gonna be in the NCAA tournament again?
Ever again? Hopefully, yeah. I'll say yes.
Could they do it next year with Cuonzo Martin as head coach?
Could they? Sure. Will they? Probably not.
Okay. We might circle back around to that later.
I think they'd be better than this year, depending on who they can get in the old portal.
Yeah.
If they got a point guard, then I think they would be better than this year, but maybe probably not good enough.
Okay, we basically said the whole thing now, so I want to give a quick shout out to YouTube commenter named Drew, who said, get a point guard in the transfer portal, run it back with Cuonzo, another year of getting these guys on the same page, and he thinks, Drew, the YouTube commenter, thinks NCAA tournament, bubble team, perhaps.
Okay.
I don't think he's crazy for that take.
I don't think that's impossible whatsoever.
It would need to be a good point guard, and
nobody would see it happen.
Yeah.
No one would attend the games.
True.
But
maybe late in the season.
Maybe.
Yeah, it would take a while to get things spun up, I would say. But I don't know how you get a point guard. I mean, I guess the pitch to a point guard is like, hey, look, you can play 87 minutes per game because we don't have a point guard.
Yeah.
I don't know.
87 minutes.
We're gonna return to Drew and some other YouTube commenters and Twitter replies and stuff based on some of our coaching search talk and just Cuonzo comments in general. Because it's we got some good feedback. Want to touch base with where the fans are, at least the ones that listen to us. Before we get into all of that, just a couple football things. Jaden Daniels, the transfer quarterback from Arizona State, is going to LSU, not Missouri, as was rumored and projected by some.
Yeah, it seemed like there was honestly a lot of steam behind Jaden Daniels to Missouri, and I think LSU kind of came in late and stole him.
Well, it was pretty well known that he was shopping around for the best NIL deal he could get, which, whatever, more power to him. And Mizzou has been known to put together some pretty decent deals, but LSU was able to do one better, and they landed him. But a little bit of a crowded quarterback room. I mean, that was going to be the case no matter what. I think he was maybe, I don't know. I would say probably the coaching staff wasn't guaranteeing him anything as far as playing time. So if he thought, I'm going to have to compete for the job either way.
Yeah, he would have.
Yeah, might as well go where there's a little bit better offer.
Sure.
On the same line of thinking, Coach Drinkwitz did answer some questions about the quarterback position specifically.
Did he answer them?
He was asked questions about the quarterback position and about potentially still looking for a transfer quarterback. And he basically said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, like, we're not exactly looking for a quarterback, but if somebody was interested in coming to Mizzou, we would listen to them.
Which sounds to me like I am trying to keep everyone happy and say a very vague statement.
Yeah. And I don't know the tone of this, but he was like very specifically said, I'm not going to let Connor Bazelak Connor. He said basically,
not going to let him return.
He's like, I'm not going to let you media vultures ask Connor Bazelak a single question. No, he said that basically about Brady Cook and Tyler Macon. He was not going to make them available to the media, obviously because they would be asked about.
The media is just really trying to exploit the kids. Huh?
Yeah. Who knows what kind of damaging questions they would ask the young quarterbacks.
Brady Cook, Tyler Macon. Connor Bazelak's gone.
Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, it did seem like he was kind of like really trying to be careful with his words when he was answering that question. I don't know. I at this point, to me, it feels like they've been trying and they've been striking out.
That's what it sounds like to me, is like, yeah, obviously we've been looking for quarterbacks and it's not really working out. So
yeah,
if one comes knocking, we will listen to them, obviously.
Yeah, I kind of feel like JT Daniels might be a last resort option, but otherwise, I think we're rolling into the season with who we got.
Which is not the end of the world.
That's fine.
It might not be good. It might be good. The thing is, we don't really know.
It's probably not going to be great, but it might not be terrible.
Settling for mediocrity.
That's what we do.
Okay. It's basketball season. The basketball season is winding down.
Almost isn't.
It almost is not, but it's also the best part of basketball season. Coming right up, March Madness, Selection Sunday, right around the corner. SEC tournament has started. There's lots to talk about.
Mizzou's about to run through the bracket.
We'll get to that. Let's start with that. SEC tournament. So we cheated. We know Missouri has won their first game, but let's just look at the bracket here and make some projections. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but there's a lot of seeding implications, and maybe for Florida, their tournament hopes are on the line in their first game. What do you think? Does Florida need to beat A&M to like really feel secure, or do you think
Florida's
they're in?
out? I think they're out right now. I think they'd have to beat A&M and Auburn.
Interesting.
To make the tournament.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so Georgia and Vanderbilt are playing right now. We both have Vanderbilt winning that game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then
you cheat. You looked at my thing.
I didn't. Georgia's bad.
Yeah.
Tom Crean not coming back.
He's gone.
It's halftime right now.
What's the score?
Vanderbilt is winning 35-14.
Oh my gosh.
Tom Crean's super gone. Okay, Missouri beat Ole Miss. Is Kermit Davis going to be back as Ole Miss head coach?
I'm going to say no. I think he's gone.
We're going to talk about Andy Kennedy later, but I'm wondering if some Ole Miss fans are thinking maybe we shouldn't have got rid of that guy. No, they're probably, like most fans, delusional and think they deserve a coach better than Andy Kennedy and Kermit Davis combined. So
Who would that be?
Like
Tom Izzo?
Yes.
You think Tom Izzo would go to Ole Miss?
No. So you think Florida needs to beat Texas A&M to sniff the NCAA tournament? Do you think they're going to do it?
Yes, I do.
Okay, me too.
I think they'll beat A&M.
Me too. So then do you think Missouri can pull off the upset against LSU?
12-seeded Mizzou over 5-seed LSU. No, I don't.
12-5
That's
matchup?
the 12-5. That is scary. I'm gonna still say LSU wins.
A lot of 12 seeds to beat the 5 seed.
Yeah. LSU is a defensive nightmare for a team with no point guard.
Yeah, last time they played, the Missouri offense was pretty ugly.
They were
LSU didn't even play that well.
They were guarding Mizzou at half court almost, like just extending them
Just
away
them
from
up
the
there.
basketball,
Yeah.
away from the
basket.
That's the word, basket, as possible.
Yeah, Missouri ended up scoring 55 points in that game, which is pretty good. I think.
Pretty good.
I mean, I would expect this Missouri team to be held to like in the 40s against LSU. LSU won by 20. Probably a repeat tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Okay. Mississippi State, South Carolina. I've got South Carolina winning, though it's the 7-10 matchup, but those teams are only one game apart in the SEC standings. I think it could go either way.
Yeah, give me Mississippi State.
I feel like Frank Martin, he seems to get his teams going for tournaments.
You think is he returning next year?
I think so.
South Carolina. Okay.
Well, can South Carolina do a lot better than him?
Probably. No, I don't know.
A lot better?
Probably not.
Say what you actually think.
I don't know. I don't know how to value Frank Martin as a coach.
I don't really either. He is a little
like
bit.
I feel like he's older, but he's like respected. It's kind of like the old grandpa that's like knows what he's doing still. Like, I don't know.
I'm gonna tell him you called him a grandpa.
You know him?
Is he actually a grandpa? Probably.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt, we have them beating Georgia, but are they able to upset Alabama? I'm going to say no. I think that'll be a close game.
I think that could be a good game. I did pick Alabama.
Okay, on to the quarterfinals. Florida could really put themselves in the NCAA tournament if they upset Auburn.
Yeah, I don't see it.
No, me neither. I got Auburn winning. Then I have Arkansas beating LSU.
I do, but as well, I think that could be a good game.
Mm-hmm. I have Tennessee beating South Carolina.
I have Tennessee beating Mississippi State.
I have Kentucky beating Alabama.
As do I.
Then in the semifinals, I have Arkansas upsetting Auburn. I think just look at the standings. The top 4 teams in the SEC, Auburn, Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas, I think those teams any of them can beat each other any night.
Yeah.
So I've got Arkansas pulling off the upset.
That was probably honestly one of the toughest games for me to pick on here, but I did pick Auburn.
Yeah, I think it's a toss-up. Then I have Kentucky beating Tennessee.
I do as well.
And I have Kentucky beating Arkansas to take home the SEC Tournament Championship.
I have Kentucky beating Auburn.
Wow.
Circled it to make it real official.
So then, Kentucky, fresh off their championship, going into Selection Sunday, I have them securing a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Guys, I just want to say beforehand that before we started recording, I started getting a little arrogant about my abilities to guess what seeds teams are going to get in the NCAA tournament. I'm not going to lie. I think I'm kind of a savant at NCAA seeding. Okay? Go ahead.
Every team in the tournament, you think ladies and gentlemen, Kyle thinks
this might be a little
that he could seed the NCAA tournament, project what teams are going to be seeded where.
It would have to be after all the tournaments are done.
Yes.
But yes, go on.
More accurately than the computer program known as barttorvik.com.
I think I potentially could, yes.
Well, I think if I had known about your confidence in this area, then you can bet I would have constructed a way to test that.
Yeah.
But I don't think we have time.
That's fine.
Before this coming NCAA tournament.
That's fine.
But
just know that I could have done it.
We're going to do a taste of it with the SEC teams.
Okay, that's fine.
And then I'm going to put a note in my phone for this time next year. You're doing the whole tournament.
That's fine. And just keep in mind that we're making these predictions before any of these tournaments are happening. So that could be potentially pretty inaccurate depending on what happens. But I agree with you. Kentucky's a 1 seed.
Okay. Are they the only 1 seed from the SEC?
Yes.
Okay. So I think it could go either way. I think potentially if Auburn wins the tournament, they're the 1 seed.
Agree.
I could see a weird situation depending on how the other tournaments fall where they're both 1 seeds. I think that's least likely.
I agree.
So I've got Kentucky at 1 seed, Auburn a 2 seed.
Yep.
Do you have any other 2 seeds?
Nope.
I've got Tennessee and Arkansas as 3 seeds.
I think that was tough for me to decide where those 2 teams should go. I've got Tennessee at 3, Arkansas at 4.
You know what? Let me pull up Bart Torvik real quick and see what he currently thinks about all this stuff. You have Arkansas at 4. Okay.
Just because their non-conference was awful.
It was pretty bad.
But they've been very good. And they did beat number 1 Auburn.
Then who do you have next? The next highest, would that be LSU?
LSU as a 6.
Me too. I also have Alabama as a 6.
Really?
Yeah.
I've got Alabama a 9.
Wow. Let me catch us up to where Bart Torvik has everybody.
Okay.
And this is a projection based on how the site and the man himself thinks the conference tournaments will go.
Okay.
This isn't like what if it ended today. This is with those projections. He's got Kentucky a 1 seed, Auburn a 2 seed, Tennessee a 2 seed, Arkansas a 4 seed, LSU and Alabama 5 seeds.
Alabama a 5?
Yes.
He's out of his mind. His computer doesn't know what he's doing.
So then the only thing left is that your tournament. Is that all of your SEC teams? But you said maybe Florida could work their way in if they beat Texas A&M. You think they do beat Texas A&M?
I mean, if they beat A&M, they're going to be right there on the bubble. If I think they could be like one of those play-in game 11 seeds, but right now, I don't know if they're in. I think they're like one of the last 4 out.
Bart Torvik has Florida as the last team in the tournament. And I am wrong because I wrote down a 10 seed. So that means I need them to beat Auburn.
Yeah.
And then maybe that.
I
Maybe
think
that could
they're
happen.
going to have to.
So
it's going to be fascinating.
Bubble city for Florida.
Alabama 5 seed. That is a little crazy to me. They have some terrible losses. Missouri being one of those.
Yeah. That's their worst,
I
right?
don't see any way Alabama's a 5 seed unless they just like run through this tournament. But we'll see.
We'll see. If Kyle's right about that, then maybe he's got a case for the whole tournament next year.
9 seed might be a little low, but we'll see.
Do you have Florida out? Sorry, I missed that.
Yes, I do.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Selection Sunday is such a fun thing.
It's great.
It's more fun when your team is involved.
That is true. A little more stressful though.
Yeah. When was the last time Missouri had like a sketchy Selection Sunday? I feel like when they were
Like on the bubble.
yeah, like the Jordan Clarkson, Jabari Brown Jr. year
Yeah.
before they left.
They didn't make it that year.
They did not. And I feel like most people thought they were
They were talented enough, but
Right.
they had some weird stuff going on that year. They lost some really weird games. It's like any game outside of Missouri Arena they could not win.
And the SEC was not as good back then, and so you had to have a much better conference record to make the tournament.
Yep.
Okay, so I've got 7 SEC teams in the tournament. I'm probably wrong about Florida. Kyle's got 6. Florida's going to be a major bubble team,
Yeah. I think just a coin flip.
not a 10 seed most likely,
No.
like I have them.
I doubt it.
Who you think Kentucky's going to win the SEC tournament, and so do I. So therefore, you think they have the best chance to make, to win the whole thing out of all these SEC teams?
Yeah, I do, just because I think they're really well rounded, and I don't know that anybody can stop Sheboy. Like he's just gonna get like 15 and 20 versus like anybody they play.
They've been so consistent down the stretch, and he's the main.
Yeah, he's
driver
the
of that.
he's the most consistent player in the country by far.
I think Auburn is as talented as Kentucky, and maybe like both of them at their very best. Auburn probably wins that, but they don't have the consistency.
Right.
And
Yeah, they've been all over the place.
Yeah. They Kentucky did drop the road game to Arkansas last week,
True.
but Arkansas has been
They
incredibly
win at
hot.
home, man. They always do that.
All right, so let's get back into sort of some of the Cuonzo Martin coaching search conversation, but we're bringing some of the audience in, some of their takes that we've seen on Twitter and in the YouTube comments. We talked about our guy Drew. He was, what did we already talk about? Oh, like Cuonzo coming back, bringing in a transfer point guard, keeping Aiden Shaw in the mix, and then maybe being a bubble team next year. That was Drew's take from a couple episodes ago. Where you're squinting at me.
I can't remember if he said to bring Cuonzo back or not, but maybe
Well, I
somebody
think
did.
it was just like, oh, maybe he was talking about you bring in a coach that brings a player with
I
them or
believe-
something
yep,
like that.
That's what it was.
Yeah. And I mentioned, you got to think a new coach could. I mean, with how easy it is to transfer, a new coach is maybe bringing a guy or two, and then he brought up Kim English, who has. I was not quite aware of this. He has the number 80 player in the country coming in this year's recruiting class,
Big guy.
and has a decent point guard already on the roster. So
That's appealing.
yeah, but I don't think that situation is unique necessarily to Kim English. I think there's lots of coaches that
Sure.
could bring in a recruit plus a
Yeah,
player.
and there's going to be 1,000+ players on the market.
Yeah.
In the transfer portal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could see a scenario where no matter who the coach is, even if it is Cuonzo, next year the team is a couple pieces away from being decent. That's not impossible.
I think that was the next jump I was making
there's
mentally.
a lot of nice pieces to build around. Brazil, Kobe Brown, assuming he's going to come back for one more year. Maybe some of these transfers take a step. Ronnie DeGray, I think, is a versatile player that can, he's intriguing.
Had a really good game today against Ole Miss.
Had a great game tonight, yeah. So, I mean, they could certainly be a bubble team next year for sure, even with Cuonzo.
Okay, so that's where we're in agreement with Drew, where he had a bone to pick with us, maybe talking about Andy Kennedy as maybe too likely of a coach. Maybe we were getting a little too excited about the prospect of Andy Kennedy being the next head coach. And sure, I said in the episode that probably not very many people would be happy with that hire, and that's true. And we saw that in the comment
It's
section.
fairly understandable.
But I don't know. I just feel like he brought up Andy Kennedy only went to 2 tournaments in his 11 years at Ole Miss.
Tough place to win.
Absolutely. Ole Miss not invested in their basketball program. They kind of acted like they were a bit more because they paid Kermit Davis more than Andy Kennedy was making.
Yeah, Kermit Davis was considered an upgrade, and then they've been worse.
Yeah, this season for Kermit Davis has been basically perfectly equal to Andy Kennedy's worst year, and it was his last season there. And I don't know. I think I'm looking at the Kennedy situation with Ole Miss as more of he's been there so long. There's a bit of an arms race for coaches in the SEC. We got to try to make a move. It's just getting stale. We just had our worst season in 11 years. Let's move on, try something new. Get a new face in here.
Sure.
Energize the fans.
Yeah, I mean, I think what he did at Ole Miss is honestly it's fairly impressive, but on what he's done at UAB, maybe more impressive to me.
Yeah, a roster full of transfers, including KJ Buffin, who transferred from Ole Miss, went with Kennedy to UAB. UAB is objectively a better team than Ole Miss this year.
Yeah, by far.
And probably were last year as well.
Yeah.
They're a better team than Missouri.
What even conference are they in? Conference USA?
Of the United States of America.
Yeah.
I think they're the 2 seed in the conference tournament. And they're like in the mix for an at-large bid, I think.
Yeah. I would just say Andy Kennedy, I completely understand, like, not exciting at all. But maybe like just a really safe floor.
Yeah.
I just don't at Missouri. I don't think Andy Kennedy is ever having a season like we're going through right now.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's a good X's and O's coach. I think he didn't have great resources at Ole Miss. Not to say that he's got all the resources in the world at Mizzou, and he was not an incredible recruiter, even by basketball in the state of Mississippi standards.
Right.
But
and he's definitely not our first choice at all.
Yeah, I would agree.
He's a ways down my list at least. I think.
And I was factoring in like how realistic of a candidate he would be for the Missouri job. So, but Drew, I think.
Thanks for your comment.
Yeah, and you make a good point. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be excited about Andy Kennedy either. If I seemed that way last episode, maybe I was mistaken. But talking about sort of comparing Missouri to other programs, we listed off last week a bunch of schools that we thought had coaches on the hot seat. Since then, Kevin Keats has been retained at NC State.
I actually had not heard that.
Yeah. So he'll be back there.
That's good news.
Yeah. Tom Green, who we talked about last week, he's out the door at Georgia. But I wanted to... Well, we had a comment that a guy thought we were overvaluing the program's status in the modern college basketball landscape. And so KenPom has a feature where they rank the programs based on data from 1997 to 2021. So it does not include this season. And Missouri is 51st best program in the country, basing it off of somewhat recent history. Some of the teams that we talked about last week, including North Carolina State, they're at 43. Pittsburgh, 44. Who else did we talk about? Kansas State 57, Ole Miss 63, Arizona State 65, Georgia 66, Wake Forest 67. So
Well, it's kind of crazy how many schools we talked about last week. I mean, we talked about it pretty much as if all of those were fairly much pretty much a coin flip.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what Ken Palm is saying as well. All
Yeah.
of those schools are within like 20 spots of each other. It's pretty
Right.
crazy. That was Mitch, by the way, that
yes.
said we are valuing Missouri a little too high.
And I can understand why some fans would think that, but I think what we were factoring into the status of the program was not even some of the same stuff that Ken Palm is.
Yeah.
Ken Palm's purely looking at like
Wins and losses.
yeah, and
Yeah.
the ratings within their site.
Right. I mean, I think.
And NCAA tournament success.
Right, and I think one thing where you have to use a little bit of nuance is resources, but also how difficult is it to win? And I think maybe we touched on this a little bit last week, but I'm thinking NC State could be a pretty hard place to win consistently. You're having to recruit in the same state as Duke and North Carolina, and I don't know,
Really
you're kind
tough
of a perennial bottom half ACC team. Like I just that's wins and losses in the last decade. That's probably a better program than Missouri, but that could be a harder place to win potentially.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, and another thing you got to factor in Kansas City and St. Louis. If we're seeing the same thing in football, we've always known if a coach could come in and recruit those areas at a high level, the program would have success. And in the last 10 years, if a coach could just recruit Columbia, Missouri, well, in basketball, the team would be better than they are.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's like you don't need it's shocking how little recruiting success Cuonzo Martin has had.
Exactly.
And it's not all 100% his fault. Like he landed Mario McKinney and
Torrance Watson, who I thought was a great get at the time.
Both of those guys not looking like the type of player that would succeed at Missouri at this point.
Right. Research department, could you find out can we find out how much Kevin Keats makes at NC State? I'm just curious.
So it's not all wins and losses that we're factoring into the program, like being where Missouri's program is compared to other schools, but looking at wins and losses and tournament appearances and stuff like that, we're right there in the ballpark with
pretty much everybody.
Nearly every school we talked about last week.
It's about 2.5 a year.
So less than Gonzo.
Yeah. But I think that makes sense. That's about where I would expect the NC State coach to be paid. But that's another thing. Like Missouri has shown with the hiring and how much they're paying Gonzo that they are willing to spend to get the coach that they want. Now, maybe the current athletic director, maybe that's a little bit different. And maybe, they're not paying Eli Drinkwitz. Like, trying to compare between sports is a little tough, but we're not paying Coach Drinkwitz what we would be paying the equivalent of Cuonzo Martin in football. You follow? Does that make sense? So, I don't know. There's room to make a splash higher money-wise. Maybe not right now because of the situation with the buyouts and everything, but just, if a coach comes in and they're successful, they could be extended for a huge payday down the line if they, just keep going to NCAA tournaments. We had a few names thrown out to us in various comments and on Twitter, and maybe since you did such a good job looking up that last commenter, can you find who mentioned the Baylor assistant Jerome Tang? I thought that was an interesting name because we saw this past year longtime Gonzaga assistant Tommy Lloyd went to Arizona, and they're going to be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. So maybe it's worth looking around at some longtime successful assistants or associate head coaches that maybe are ready to make the jump. Obviously, nobody can expect Missouri to land that highly regarded of an assistant coach, and then also nobody should be expecting an assistant to come in and lead a team to,
a top 3 season.
exactly.
Like Tommy Lloyd, yeah.
Right.
That was Show Me Mo on YouTube that suggested Jerome Tang, which that is really interesting. I typically kind of am a little cautious about assistants who have never been a head coach before, and I think it's just a totally different ball game. But maybe somebody that's been a long time assistant coach, they're still recruiting, and they're observing how to run a program and that kind of stuff. So it's not like it's a completely foreign topic to them, but I typically feel like I get less excited about assistants.
Yeah, I
with
agree.
no head coaching experience.
Yeah. So it made me think. I went back and looked at like some of the names that were being tossed around this time last year in similar situations, and one of those was Tony Stubblefield, who was an assistant and like the associate head coach under Dana Altman at Oregon for like a decade, and he got the head coaching job at DePaul. So he coached there this year, and they're 99th in KenPom, 15-15 overall. They won 6 games in the Big East, and that is an improvement over last year, but it's about on par with actually some of the better years that DePaul had under their previous head coach. So far that looks like a good hire, and I read some articles saying that like Oregon is actually suffering having lost him. So I think maybe watch out for DePaul, and that's kind of an interesting team to compare and contrast with Arizona and Tommy Lloyd.
Another assistant coach that somebody threw out was Tyler on Twitter, and he mentioned Brian Michelson, who is an assistant at Gonzaga. So obviously, again, I'm not expecting a Tommy Lloyd situation.
Tommy Lloyd was the head coach in waiting. Like
Yes.
when Mark Few retired, the head coaching job at Gonzaga belonged to Tommy Lloyd.
Yeah, it was almost surprising that he left. But any capacity of work with Mark Few is pretty valuable, I would say. Mark Few he's a genius, man. He knows what he knows what to do. He is an incredible offensive mind.
And the way he has like guided Gonzaga just through the evolving college basketball landscape over 20 years. Mm-hmm. Was kind of at the forefront of getting like the international big man type of player that has been dominant in college basketball. He's been very impressive.
So Michelson probably isn't my choice, but and he's a pretty young guy, but I can see the appeal for sure.
So definitely an area we didn't really focus on was like Power 5 or like premier assistant coaches. Once again, you're gonna have to help me remember who mentioned Jeff Linder.
That was also Tyler on Twitter.
So he brought up Jeff Linder, the head coach at Wyoming, and good name to throw out for sure. He was formerly the head coach at Northern Colorado, steadily improved their play over the 4 years that he was there, and then in just his second year at Wyoming, he took them from 164th in KenPom to 55th this year. They're 24-7 overall, 13-5 in the Mountain West Conference. Now, one thing about him is he has always kind of been a West Coast or like Rocky Mountains and West coach. So maybe Missouri and the Midwest is not really his scene, but definitely a name to keep an eye on.
A guy that's going to be moving up somewhere in the next year or two for sure.
Yeah. So definitely a good thought there. Let's see. We had another commenter mention, I think maybe it was Drew again. Just all over the comments. We appreciate you, Drew. Mentioning Drew Valentine from Loyola Chicago, but we did talk about him a little bit. you kind of mentioned, obviously, it's just his first year this year. He's only 30 years old.
30 years old.
So maybe it's worth.
It's just tough to gauge how well he's doing because of how good of a coach Porter Moser was before, and Drew Valentine was on that staff before, so he kind of knew how Porter Moser was running the program. But and a few of those players have carried over. Obviously, they lost probably their best player from the past few years, whose name escapes me at the moment. But a lot of that same foundation is still there this year, and they're not as good as they've been the last few years. They were.
Cameron Krutwig.
They were 4th in the Missouri Valley Conference this year. They actually did end up winning that conference tournament, so they'll be in the NCAA tournament. But
Bart Torvik says a 10 seed.
Yeah, I would have guessed probably a 9 or 10. But Krutwig's gone. But yeah, it's very possible Valentine is a huge up and comer. He's gonna be a fantastic coach, home run hire. But I just don't think I would feel comfortable pulling the trigger just yet.
Now, okay, so tell me this. Drew Valentine versus Cam English.
Right, yeah. Pretty similar situations.
So do you feel like it's a coin flip there?
If I had to pick one for Missouri to hire,
yeah,
I'd probably pick Cam English just because of his connections to Missouri, and I think he is a incredible recruiter.
Yeah,
and could potentially be. I think he was one of the best recruiters as an assistant coach potentially before he moved to George Mason at Tennessee, getting Kennedy Chandler. I don't know. Kim English is very appealing, but still, I don't know if I'd feel comfortable pulling the trigger yet. It is a really, really tough decision for whoever gets to make these decisions.
You mean we don't get to?
Well, we might.
I thought it was our turn.
Do you want to be an athletic director someday?
Probably not.
I don't think so either.
Would you rather be a head coach or an athletic director?
Well, with my real life skill set, I think I'd be better as an AD. So I guess I'd pick that.
Imagine you only get 1 year, or you can do it for as long as you think you could manage it. Which one do you think you could do longer before people thought you were a fraud? If you just started tomorrow.
Oh, I could be athletic director many years longer than a head coach before people think I'm a fraud. If I was a head coach, they would literally walk into the arena and be like, what is this? Who's this guy? And I'd be like, all right, guys, we're going to run some suicides. And they'd be like, no, we're not.
Three-man weave.
Three-man weave. Let's run a little Barcelona offense. Get it going, guys.
Let's work on our free throws. You could get some assistants around you with some really solid coaching experience, and just delegate. Okay, where are we here? I think the last comment is a question from one of our supporters on Patreon who asked us this on Discord, and I just asked it a little bit ago, so I thought we might as well just answer it on the episode. He said if the coach next year is not Cuonzo Martin, if you had to bet money on one name, who would you say is most likely to be the head coach next year?
First of all, I would never gamble.
I would gamble. I would never gamble on this. This is the odds of getting this right.
Yeah.
Way too low.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna honestly. I'll throw out Nico Medved. I think he is a up and comer. I think he's going to be somewhere else next year. That's not Colorado State. He's got Midwestern ties. He's shown he can turn around a program really quickly. And Georgia, I saw a pretty reputable site that was a Georgia related site that put up a hot board. Nico Medved is on their hot board, and everybody else. Oh my gosh, I always do this. Everybody else on their list was honestly fairly underwhelming.
He pulled his arms off.
I just destroyed this little decoration, little bobblehead.
Stay unusual. You literally ripped his arms out of his socket. And he's still holding the baseball bat.
I was just really nervous about who I was going to gamble here with. What was I saying?
Nico Medved. Yeah. Georgia hot board.
Okay, yes, Georgia hot board. They've got Nico Medved on there, and a lot of their other people on that list were pretty underwhelming. And to think that maybe they think they've got a shot at him, I definitely think Missouri's a better job than Georgia. I don't know. I guess I would pick him. Another thing I will throw out is Steve Forbes. Maybe I'm crazy. Mitch, I'm sorry if I'm overvaluing the Missouri program, but I don't think it's impossible Steve Forbes could end up here.
I was going to say Steve Forbes as my bet.
And, Wake Forest just lost in the first round of the ACC tournament today to a terrible Boston College team. I think they're squarely on the bubble for the NCAA tournament, and I think there's a very good chance they're going to be out. And I think that makes Steve Forbes look less attractive to his next employer.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a guarantee that he's out the door.
True.
But, yeah, I mean, maybe I'm kind of swinging for the fences there. But, yeah, I put some money on Steve Forbes. Speaking of articles about Georgia, I saw a writer for a paper in Atlanta quoted that Georgia was focusing in on 4 candidates at the start of their search. One, I can't remember. One was the Cleveland State head coach. One was Steve Forbes, and the other one was USC's Andy Enfield, who
literally between the time you told me that 2 hours ago and this moment has been extended at USC
through 2028. And you got to know that's a fat, juicy contract.
Very fat. I don't understand how in the world Andy Enfield ended up on Georgia's hot board or whoever this person was.
Yeah. Bart Torvik has Wake Forest as last four in 11 seed.
I think that's would be my guest as well.
So that spot could be gobbled up by a couple conference tournament upsets.
Sure. Definitely.
It always happens. Yeah, put me down for Steve Forbes. Why not? I was thinking if I wanted to set my sights a little bit lower, I would say somebody like the Murray State head coach. But, if we're wanting to make a splash.
They're going to be dancing for a while.
That's possible, yeah. So, that's another thing.
He's busy.
That's another thing that factors into all of this is, the timeline of when coaches are done coaching this year. Obviously, I think I said this.
Or if you're hiring a coach at all.
True. Dang. I guess.
Back to reality.
Just threw some cold water on you.
Wow. Speaking of cold water.
Yeah, that's good for you.
At your recommendation, Kyle, I took a cold shower this morning. Was that this morning?
We talked about it around noon, so I can't imagine that was this morning, but
it was today.
It was this morning.
Definitely today. That makes me really happy.
Yeah, Kyle's been a proponent of cold showers for as long as I've known him. Just kidding. For a little while now. And it was invigorating. I'm not scared of cold water. I love a nice spring, little jump in the spring river or something like that. And really gets the juices flowing. Invigorating, you could say. And I felt a little bit of that this morning in the shower.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you're furious and also invigorated at the same time. It's like a rare combination where you're just like, this is awful and the best thing I've ever done at the same time.
I think you and I have different strategies for coping with it because I try to just eliminate all thought about the shower entirely. I call it the mind over matter strategy.
Okay.
And I just don't think about it at all. And I basically pretend like it's hot water. Or I just pretend like it's not cold, basically. I just act like it's not cold. Just go about my business.
Okay, well, I'm really happy for you.
So when you say you're throwing cold water on the situation,
that's a good thing.
You're invigorating.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything to you. You're prepared.
I'm bouncing back right now.
Okay, back to Cuonzo Martin. Give me a percentage. What percent do we know the status of Cuonzo Martin one way or the other by Selection Sunday?
Okay. By the end of Sunday
night.
I think we know for sure.
100% we know.
100% we know one way or the other. Oh man.
Okay. I'll throw out an 80.
It's gonna be a long week.
Yeah, it is gonna be brutal. I'm gonna be checking Twitter every 5 seconds.
Good thing Missouri's gonna keep winning.
Yeah,
they could do it.
Okay, and I know we've talked about this a couple of times, but this is probably the last time we will record a podcast before we know. Give me your percentage. What percent chance do you give Cuonzo Martin for keeping his job? There's a blank percent chance Cuonzo keeps his job.
40.
I was thinking 35.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to say a couple things now that you brought that up. Okay. I don't want anybody giving me a hard time when they bring him back, and I'm going to spin it positively, okay? I'm warning you now. I'm warning both of you. I'm warning the listeners. I'm going to spin it positive. I'm going to try to look on the bright side. I'm not going to be super negative, okay? Because what's the point in that after it's done, okay?
I can see that.
So
you, if they were just like, he's coming back for another year, you're just like, okay, let's do it.
Let's figure out how to win some games.
Okay.
Because
there might be like a couple of minutes where you're like annoyed about it.
Yes.
But then you'll be like, okay.
By the time we're in the booth ready to record,
got to stop sulking and just go win some games. Okay.
Because if they're bringing him back, I don't want to be we're reassessing the situation every offseason, or like we're questioning things every single season. Now, I don't know. I just would hate to be in a situation where for the next 3 seasons, the team is just kind of middling in a bubble team, and we're just over and over again debating whether they should bring him back or not. So I'm going to be motivated for my own like mental health to try to imagine ways that next year's team could be good.
Yeah, I mean, immediately we're going to have to hit the transfer portal. And, I mean, you never know what kind of players are going to be available. You have no idea what kind of player might want to come here when they know they're going to be the guy.
Right.
And so if there is a possibility, like we said earlier, Missouri's a couple of pieces away from being decent, and you never know.
Yeah, and the SEC is nowadays the kind of league where if you finish in the top half of the league, then you are going to be around the NCAA bubble.
Yep. Yeah.
It would at least be fun to be entering the SEC tournament thinking Missouri wins a couple games here, then they've really added to their resume. I would love to be able to talk about Missouri's resume.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's literally nothing they can do in this tournament except for win it all.
Yeah.
If they want to play in the tournament.
Right. What do you think about Jamie Dixon, head coach at TCU? He was formerly the head coach at Pittsburgh. Now he's at TCU.
Personally, I mean, I guess if it was just like all of a sudden Jamie Dixon wanted to come here, I'd be like, okay, that sounds fine. I don't think that really makes sense in my mind. Isn't he have a connection to TCU?
Must be.
Where he currently is.
That must be the case.
I'm pretty sure when he left Pittsburgh, he was actually, they were good. And so it was like weird that he was leaving for TCU. But I think it's maybe where he's from or something. He has a connection. And so I don't see him ever leaving TCU if that's the case.
Yeah, he played at TCU.
Okay.
Never mind.
Why did that?
I don't know. I was just perusing KenPom, and he just, pretty successful coach who has had middling success at TCU.
They're a classic 8-9 seed.
Yeah.
This year in the tournament.
Man, I don't know. I was just kind of looking over my list to see if there's any other names that we hadn't talked about. Okay. So one name that intrigued me was Florida State assistant Charlton Young. There's an H in there. He is loved by everyone at Florida State. And he's actually had 2 stints at Florida State as an assistant. He is a dynamite recruiter. Everybody loves him. However, he actually, when I started to do some research, has been a head coach. He coached Georgia Southern for 4 years. And their best team was 15-15, 12-6 in the Southern Conference. Their best KenPom rating was 246. So he was a head coach for 4 years from 2010 to 2013. Got fired, went right back to Florida State.
One thing I would bring up, which honestly with that resume, maybe this is not possible, but what's their coach's name? Like Leonard Hamilton?
Yeah.
Isn't he like 90 years old or something? Yeah. Would he be a potential to replace Leonard Hamilton in the next 2 or 3 years?
I think so. I don't know how old Hamilton is, but I could definitely see him just sticking around Florida State until...
Florida State has been kind of disappointing this year too. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, all right, Leonard, we'll give you another season. I mean, he doesn't look like he's old, but I think he's in his 70s.
73.
Yeah. That's about retirement age.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, not so great this year. After a nice run.
They destroyed us still.
That is true. Doesn't take a whole lot.
That's true.
It's weird. Like I'm scared to end this episode because we're not gonna
I know.
talk again until after we know Cuonzo Martin's fate.
We're gonna talk to you. It's like insane to think tomorrow could very well be Cuonzo Martin's last game.
Did I say 40%?
You did.
45. It's like getting closer.
It's just legitimately almost a coin flip for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way as well. It just kind of seems like nobody knows really what's going to happen, and that makes me want to lean more towards he's coming back, because I kind of feel like if they were going to fire him, somebody would know, and it would kind of be leaking out by this point.
Yes, we would hear the Twitter rumor mills.
I think there'd be some rumblings, and there's been nothing.
Yeah. And
that scares me.
Yeah. There was more talk. I feel like there was more legitimate talk when, like, people were saying, when people were trying to figure out, like, can they actually get rid of him this year?
Yeah.
Contract-wise, and that actually had to be investigated a little bit. Then it was like there's some legitimacy to, okay, the athletic department knows they have a way out if they want it. So the fact that they were even acknowledging that made me think of something, but that was 2 months ago. All right.
It's going to be fascinating.
It's going to be a fun week. Missouri's got another game.
Twitter is going to be hell if they bring him back.
Well, yeah, it's going to be bad until... Okay, so another thing somebody said on YouTube was that it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I think they were talking directly about, like, fan apathy and just empty seats
economy
and stuff. That too. And I agree on that part of it. But it would get better immediately. Like, fan interest would improve immediately, would not get worse if they fired him and hired a new coach.
Oh, 100%.
That may not be the right decision long-term basketball-wise.
But it's the right decision short-term.
Right, exactly.
100%.
Any new coach that they announce is going to get some excitement.
Even Andy Kennedy.
Well, that may be the only one. That may be the only name that doesn't, of all the names that we talked about. That might be the only one that doesn't get anybody excited except me.
What would you think about Darren DeVries?
Now, that's an interesting name. I don't think...
My kinfolk.
Yeah, that's a joke. And do we know?
We might be related at some point.
We have to do some genealogy.
Ancestry.
Okay, so he would definitely bring his son, Tucker DeVries, who was
He's impressive.
An excellent player this year as a freshman in the Missouri Valley. And the coach himself, not bad at all. So
he's the best Drake's been in a long time.
Yeah.
Past 2 years.
Missouri and Drake used to be in the same conference long, long ago.
Conference USA?
No. Much better than Conference USA. I guess I would take him. I mean, bring in...
It up.
That's... You can...
You made it
You
up.
can check me on that.
I believe you.
You better. Anyway, some of our older, I mean, more well-seasoned listeners know their history. Okay.
You?
No. I just found this out a couple days ago. Where was I going with that? Yeah, bring in a freshman that's your son who's a star player to a mid-major level.
Might be the most intriguing thing about hiring him.
Yeah. But he's been a decent recruiter at Drake, of all places.
Yeah.
For Missouri Valley standards. All right. That it? Special thank you to our Patreon supporters at the $10 level and above: Britt Treese, Brian Smith, Ryan Lee, Tristan, Ben Smith, Parker, Daddy JD, Luis Hernandez, Tim Keens, and Tyler Harshel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, boys. You can find this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. We are on Twitter at Mizzou Sports Pod, and you can email us at MissouriSportsPod@gmail.com.
You can find our t-shirts and stickers on our online shop, MissouriSportsPod.BigCartel.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We will see you next week after Cuonzo's retained.